Well, hey there everyone, it's Kristi. I hope you guys had a good week. I had a good week, to be honest. We're going to talk about a lot of political drama, some YouTube drama, perhaps, in this show. But first, welcome. This is me trying to do a podcast, YouTube radio kind of thing again, which, again, the format works out really well for me because I'm doing a lot of writing. In my full-time job, I find it very difficult to then have the energy to write scripts. But I still have too many ideas in my head, too many things knocking about in there going on, and it always helps to process it out by having a chat. And this week, Kevin Logan, my normal happy hour co-host, has been making so many appearances all over the place, so he's been a little too busy. Therefore, it was a good opportunity for me to try out this format again, which I mentioned in the past that in a previous episode I was going to do. So welcome. I don't really have a name for this show yet. At the moment it's the Kristi Winters live stream because it's very descriptive, describes pretty much exactly what happens. It's me on a live stream. Although, as you see, I'm not actually live yet. Still working within the recorded elements of OBS. And once I get these down and I feel very confident with the sources and mixing all of this stuff, I'll move this into a live format. But until then, you're just going to have to treat it like a normal podcast rather than an interactive one. So, hey, welcome to the show. That was boring. Let's get on with some stuff that's going on in life. And two kind of bits of things that I want to talk about today. The first one is the Trump administration. Then the next one will come up onto a little bit of YouTube drama. Yesterday I actually tried working with this software before, but the audio was too sensitive, ended up clipping all over the place and being BTFO'd, like literally, on the leveling. And I had a bit of a rant about what I called, the reality show president. And that's what I'm going to start with today. So the idea here is I'm going to get my phone out here, I'm going to give myself a timer. I'm going to try to keep to not more than 5 minutes per topic. Keep me a little bit focused and also keep us moving on. Yeah, the reality show presidency. I don't know about anyone else if you can relate to this feeling, but it does sometimes seem that I am trapped in Donald Trump's reality show. That's what this presidency feels like to me, and we're going to get onto the stories and we can talk a little bit more about why that is. But in my everyday life, I actually don't have a whole lot of drama. I don't. I've got very, calm relationships with my friends. There's not a lot of, there are people people I hang around with don't do kind of like backstabbing, side taking. This person is, I'm not talking to them because they said, none of that kind of crap goes on in my personal life. And therefore, to get sucked into the Trump drama on a daily basis, it feels skeezy, because he's a skeezy man. And all of this distraction, all of this nonstop drama, I feel dragged into it. I feel pulled into it because he's the president of the United States. And I was just commenting in this unusable audio that I recorded, how much we've seen the decline of the presidency, the office of the presidency, as a result of the character of the man occupying the office. And the other thing that really annoys me is how much Trump typifies the notion, he embodies the notion of white male privilege. Because it is the case that when he does things that other people would do, he gets away with it. When he says things that are incredibly sexist, even admitting to sexual assault, it's waved away as a boys will be boys sort of scenario. And this is very frustrating to me when he says incredibly racist things. People will excuse it. Well, he might have bad views, but he's not really a racist. Yet time and time again, he does things that demonstrates he is a racist. We're all being degraded by this reality show presidency because it is pomp and circumstance. It is fluff. It is not about making people's lives better. It's about Donald Trump being talked about. And that's what he really is motivated by, his own ego. Where he can go, what leaders he can meet, how much money he can make, how much credit he can take for other people's work. And it's, I heard some media show somewhere, people, a commenter saying that people elect sort of the opposite character of president than the one they just had. All right, so if we look at Trump, what can we infer about Obama? He was measured, calm, dignified, respectful, scandal-free, honorable, egalitarian, thoughtful, and put American values and the American people above his own personal interests. Now, if it is the case that we are going to get our next president is going to be the complete opposite of Donald Trump, well, I'm not going to say it will have been worth it, because Donald Trump is destroying lives along the way, but I do hope that we get an extreme opposite version of whatever Trump is as our next president, whoever he or she may be. Our country needs some dignity. Our country needs some stability. And our country needs professionals who know how to do their jobs. The problem with elections and the Trump reality show presidency is that you're not hired to be president based on your qualifications. Trump is, as we all can see, manifestly unfit for the office of presidency. And I'm really hoping that our next president, whoever he or she may be, is really as opposite to Trump as Obama was. Right, so that's on the topic of the reality show nature of the presidency. Kind of moving on now, can you believe it was just last week that Steve Bannon flamed out at Breitbart and all of the Michael Wolff book? Doesn't that feel like a long time ago already? Because I don't think it was that long ago in terms of actual chronological time, but every week is like, you know, dog years in Trump. Every week is like 4 weeks worth of news. And so we're all aging at a very rapid pace as we move through the Trump presidency. The fall of Steve Bannon. Wow. You know, this is, to me, as a political scientist, more as a political observer than a political scientist. But the fall of Steve Bannon speaks to me so much to the ephemeral, the temporary nature of riding a high of hate. And I think Trump is doing this too. He's just got a slightly longer wave that he's going to ride out, but eventually this will crash out for him too. You know, Steve Bannon, like Karl Rove, operates on the political assumption that the way to govern, the way to win elections in America is to divide Americans against each other. And that the point, the whole Republican strategy that Bannon is part of, and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and Trump are part of, is to design elections such that Democrats could never win, so that a minority of voters that are made up of hardcore conservative evangelical white Christians who accept male supremacy and have a history of tolerating racism, shall we say, hashtag not all Republicans. The party itself, though, is structured in a racist way. It's structured to actually attack and deny people who vote for the Democratic Party their constitutional rights. Steve Bannon is part and parcel of that. In fact, he's like Karl Rove. If Karl Rove kind of like, you know, revived the divide and conquer strategy, well, then, you know, Steve Bannon made it poisonous, even more overtly racist, and even more overtly hostile. And that did work for him for a while. You know, hate is a great motivator. It helped that the Russians were helping Trump. It helped that, you know, the FBI was ignoring evidence and hiding evidence from the American public that the Trump campaign had people colluding with Russian officials to undermine our election. All of this stuff kind of came together in a bit of a perfect storm. So you get the gerrymandering, you get the voter suppression to control Congress and control the Electoral College. You get Putin's interference, you get the incompetence of the FBI, you get Obama, who probably should have done more, but I can understand his constraint in not wanting to look like he was interfering in an election. It really was up to the FBI to take that forward, and they failed us. But that all being said, Bannon. Bannon thrives on hate like an internet troll. And the problem is that, eventually you come to elections where you can't win with hate. It's kind of one thing to do that in a presidential election. It's one thing to run on hate and division the way that, say, Karl Rove did with, the racist campaign against John McCain during the Republican primary of that year, and other ways that they attacked John Kerry in very scummy, sleazy, underhanded ways. Bannon, though, is like sort of ramping that up to 11 and just being overtly racist and overtly sexist and just doing all the things that, his alt-right view, his Breitbart brand makes money off of. They make money off of people who thrive on hate. And so therefore it's not really surprising to me that he was eventually hoisted by his own petard. He was destroyed by the kind of contempt and hate that has characterized his time in politics. Of course, the problem with Bannon is that he didn't know enough to not direct that kind of criticism and hate at the president's family and at the president himself. He was, I think, a little bit drunk on his own power. Sorry, I went to cough here. There's no pause button on this. It's either start stream or stop recording or start recording, so I can't edit this. I gotta just roll through, and whatever happens, happens. There might be a second act for Bannon, but he's really burned all his bridges. The path of division and hate, of power over instead of empowering people to, has consumed him. And good riddance. It happened so fast. The thing is, what is perhaps unsurprising about Steve Bannon is the rapidity. This time last year, I don't even know if Trump had been sworn in yet. Wasn't it the 20th of January or something? We got a week to go until the 1-year anniversary. The guy was on it was put on the National Security Council, wasn't he? It was one of those national advisory boards where you had to have massive clearance. He was inside the White House. He was influencing Trump's opinions on Paris Peace Accords and all of that. And now, within a year, he is jobless, homeless, because he's living in an apartment that is paid for by Breitbart, from my understanding, discredited, no financial backers, and the president dislikes him. Now, that's not to say that when Trump gets needy, he won't call Steve again. He probably will. But he will do that as a vampire, sort of, to suck up Steve's time and attention and validation. He's not gonna restore his reputation at all. It's just been, I think there is a Showtime movie, to wrap this up, to wrap up the Bannon bit. There is a Showtime movie or series or a Netflix series to be made about the first 12 months of the Trump White House. I think that's just the case. That's just the case. Next bit that we're going to talk about, oh, God, more Trump. Right. Trump is being a racist again. So moving on from racist Steve Bannon to racist Donald Trump and the infamous shithole comments. Well, I have to say, one thing that we will definitely be able to say about the Trump presidency is that because of the words that come out of his mouth, we are all having to see far more profanity and disgusting language bandied about in the press because they're quoting the president. As you all probably know, because there's been quite a shitstorm over this shithole comment. Just on a side note, der Shitstorm is actually a word the German press uses. So it's a little bit different when it's a foreign language word as opposed to seeing the word shithole in crayons as you turn on television. But as you guys know, the president was being briefed by leadership, mostly Republicans. I think one Democrat was there. So diversity! One Democrat was in the room out of 9 people. Anyway, the president, nobody really disputes this except the president, who's a known liar, referred to African nations as shitholes. And this actually a little bit ties into a point I wanted to make about the YouTube drama. Racists like Trump, who prefer immigration from Norway as opposed to more Haitians. We had, as our policy in the United States from the founding of the country, an explicitly racist immigration policy. The policy of the United States, because it was a requirement, you know, that if you wanted to go there and be a legal citizen, you had to be European, you had to be some form of white category broadly. This, and what they did was they basically, you know, excluded legal immigration from any other country and then encouraged white people to flood into the country and take it over. That was our immigration policy. Our immigration policy was a conquest immigration policy. It was invasion, occupation, and just, you know, appropriation. Invasion, you know, ethnic cleansing, and stealing people's lands. And white racists, white supremacists like Richard Spencer and Mike Enoch, they want to go back to that. They want to have an explicitly racist policy. And it wasn't until 1952 that America stopped being explicitly racist. And actually, even in the 1965 Immigration Reform Act was still massively racist. So our original sin was, in part, a part of our original sin was our racist immigration policies. That was an invasion policy, basically. There's also the fact that these guys like to leave off of talking about immigration law, these white racists. And coming back to Trump's racist immigration attitudes again, you know, when we as a country had these racist immigration laws for legal citizenship, the founders, many of the founders, and the people who came after them were kidnapping human beings in Africa or taking part in an industry that was based on kidnapping people and forcing them into human slavery, denying them their legal rights, the ability to get married, any protection under the law. And then they were just shipped around and sold off like property. And we were, as the United States, legally, you want to say, importing millions of slaves against their will. And to say that somehow our racist policies of letting in white people while kidnapping black people, and as in those two things happening at the same time, we want to deny all of the ancestors of the peoples whose family were kidnapped and brutalized. We can't. They want to say we shouldn't have immigration from those countries. We should only have immigration from the invasion countries. Now, look, I don't personally have a responsibility for the actions of the government toward Native Americans or toward slavery in the past. I don't personally have like an accountability there. However, I do benefit from the system that all of those racist policies produced, whether or not I like it. And so to deny this and somehow say, no, what we should do is go back to those policies. And what we should do is we should deny the legitimacy of people of African descent whose family members very well may have been in the country way longer than my family have been. It's just, you know, it does expose how racist our policies have been in the United States. And it might feel uncomfortable for some people to say that, but if we don't acknowledge how racist our country was in the past, we won't be able to confront the racism of Donald Trump, the racism of Richard Spencer, and the racism of others who want to somehow return America to a time when we were filtering, when we were basically like, you know, just bringing in white people in order to occupy and appropriate a country. I think that's against American values. That's against what we would call our American values today. All right, so Trump's racist, big surprise. No, not really. And then the most recent one that I turned on today, not only is he racist, sexual predator, ignoramus, buffoon, how do I go on? A con man, he's a con man too. He's also cheating on his wife. There are reports being put about today that Stormy Daniels, a woman who works in the adult film industry, was paid a six-figure, I think about $130,000, if I'm remembering this correctly, in October of 2016, a month before the election, or within the month of the election. She was paid a lot of money to not say that Donald Trump had had sex with her a year after he had married Melania, It was a consensual extramarital affair by the sounds of it. He hid it, and he paid for it to be covered up. Yeah. I never want to hear about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky in the White House again. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of these double standards. You know, if you're going to say consenting adults can do things and they're consenting, then that's fine. But if you're going to say that, you know, the men who have held the office of presidency should be moral people, well, first of all, that's not mostly the case. If you look, there's quite a lot of philanderers who have occupied the White House. But I have a feeling that just once again, the pastors, Paul Ryan, the alt-right, the people at Liberty University, members of my family who are also evangelical, who voted for Trump, are just going to sweep this under the rug. They're not going to, what does it take? He's done literally, like, other than killing someone, he's lied, he's committed fraud, he's cheated on his wife, he's sexually assaulted women and admitted to it, he is a racist, he went after the young men accused wrongly of committing crime, what was called the something Park 5, I can't remember, I'm not from New York. His business was convicted of being racist to renters. The guy is a scumbag. The guy is a scumbag. And instead of calling it what it is, and I don't understand this, you know, you've got state media, the state propaganda station, Fox, you've got people who swore oaths to the Constitution, like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, doing nothing. You have Republicans who are too cowardly to speak up and call the president on his BS. I feel like our democracy is breaking down. You know, this is a stress test of the Constitution. And what's failing the Constitution is not the Constitution itself. It's not the institutions that are failing here. It's not the procedures. It's not the laws that we are operating within. It is the men. It is the men who occupy those constitutional offices that are destroying our democracy. And you can say I'm being a slightly hyperbolic, but it is the fact that the Republicans tried to get the Justice Department to go after Christopher Steele, who was helping our government learn that the Russians were actively interfering with it. This is where their priorities are. When Paul Ryan is asked about a specifically racist comment, his reaction is that, I thought it was unfortunate. Mitch McConnell looks the other way when all of this stuff is happening. And it's a corruption, it is a complicity, it is a old boys network. This is the classic sort of example of the old boys network closing ranks and protecting their own. It's disgusting. And it will undermine our democratic institutions. It will undermine our democratic norms. It will be a stain that will take a lot of work to rub out. And whether that is, well, many things, reform of the voting laws, renewing the Voting Rights Act, ethical things for the president that are now considered custom need to be enshrined in law. There's a whole lot of dirt and muck and darkness in the form of racism and homophobia and transphobia and misogyny that is lingering in the halls of Congress and is resting peacefully on the couches in the Oval Office. And it's going to take a lot of sunlight and a massive turnout for Democratic candidates to fix it. Well, guys, that's a bit of my show. I wanted to talk about national politics, so let's move on a little bit to the YouTube scene and what has been going on, what hasn't been going on. That's what I want to know. Yes, well, all right, so quick, previously on YouTube, the Sargon and Richard Spencer debacle. Oh, that was an embarrassment. I mean, neither of them came off looking good, but Sargon definitely cannot debate. He's he's got, like I know from personal experience, he's not a thinker on his feet. He doesn't have a good command of a lot of facts. He knows maybe a couple things, and then he just makes those his foundations. So anyway, Sargon was humiliated. I mean, and Spencer was, I think, did poorly too. But Sargon not only was humiliated in terms of his performance, but because he is now taking on Richard Spencer, and the alt-right seem to be still pretty, you know, high off of their kraut expose stuff. So he is, Sargon is taking more, I think, you know, heat from the alt-right, and he's definitely flirted with and taken money from people on that side of the political spectrum, very near to him in the past. But there seems to be, I don't know, I don't think actually Sargon wants a wedge. I think he still wants to let the alt-right live and let live. I think that's his approach to the alt-right. He doesn't really seem to be taking them on per se. But in this debate, he talked to Spencer. Did not make he had like maybe one or two good points, but doesn't again. Other people have talked about this, so I'll skip that part of it. The funny thing that has come out of it, though, is that he's now decided to start his own political movement. You know, I get that. You know, I get that you need to actually do more than just talk on a YouTube channel. You need to give people information. You need to give them, you know, information like, you know, go call this person, or did you know about this? Here's a bill that's coming up. And part of the reason I have a hard time doing that on my channel, to be honest, as an American, is simply that things in Congress are moving so rapidly because the Republicans aren't using regular order anymore. They just push everything through, and there's very little opportunity to actually make an impact on Republican legislation. So I've found my activism to be more about bringing awareness than being able to target things. Except, you know, like one example of an exception would be the video that I put out on net neutrality. There was a case where you could actually call in and make some targeted efforts toward changing people's minds, although it didn't work out. But anyway, so I get that it's not enough to just talk about your problems. This is why I have such contempt for people who say, why don't you make a video about women in the Middle East? Like, what is that going to solve? What problem is that going to solve for women in the Middle East if I make a video? Honestly. Other than the fact that there are people out there who want to see feminist hate on Islam, there is literally no political value to me doing a video or doing a video series on women in the Middle East. It's not going to make any difference. It's not going to change any government policy. Those changes have to come from a different area. But so when it comes to YouTube, what you do, you know, you can be influential, but how you do that, I think personally, is you educate, you agitate, you organize. The role of the leader, in my opinion, is to bring attention to something, explain why it's a problem, present people with, if not a solution, then a political process to influence in order to change an intended outcome. That's how I work. Like, that's what my channel is. Like, here's the net neutrality thing. Here's some contact information. Hey, they're trying to kill Obamacare. Call your senator at this number. Sargon's approach is to say, I am going to lead a movement. I am going to invent a new term for a new political philosophy that's basically shitlordism. It's reverse engineering the idea that I want to be able to say anything on YouTube and get away with it. And then how do I, you know, basically infer a political philosophy from my predetermined opinions? Great stuff. Great stuff. I mean that obviously sarcastically. So yes, Sargon did this horrible debate. He then went on to make this announcement that he's starting this new liberalist. So it's Sargon liberalism, or liberalistism, is this new movement he's got going on. And even more, oh, it was so entertaining. Even more entertaining was the video. He did a hangout in a safe space, his liberalist safe space, with V and a couple of his other buddies. King Crocoduck was there as well. And to me, I have to say, listening to those white guys sitting around in a room, shitting on identity politics, saying, yeah, we need to take away affirmative action because we're against identity politics. Like, we need to stop white guys from having to, we need to make sure that white guys who are unqualified for their positions can still be hired by racists and sexists. Yes, that is how we get equality of opportunity, people. Liberalists. If you have a chance, go listen. It's a long hangout, and there's so much just absolute bullshit being talked about in there. It is like listening to first-year undergraduates who've basically had like 2 or 3 lectures on political theory, sitting in the student union pub, talking about how they're gonna, really change the world with their ideas. When the fact is, like, it's still entry-level political theory for Carl in terms of what he's reading and thinking about, because he's in his little bubble and he's not actually learning. He's reading. It's like what Bertrand Russell says. Never trust a stupid man's opinion of what a clever man says, because the stupid man will unconsciously translate what he hears into something he can understand. Carl, from my impression, is not interested in learning about political theory. He's interested in finding readers who agree with him. So, a classic example. In this hangout, he cites the idea that when you mix your work with material objects, talking about the ownership of property, right? If you make something with your hands, that's yours. That's your labor, right? That thing you made is your property. If you keep reading Locke, you'll see that he thinks that if you hire someone and they do all the work, that all that work that they've put into it is actually, it's not their property. It's your property. So he's not really sophisticated in terms of his understanding of political theory, and also the fact that Locke was, living in a world of racism and slavery, and the idea that you could own human beings. So it's not without its critiques that need to be going on. But the liberalists movement of Sargon it's an entertaining hangout. I haven't finished it all the way through, although I've listened to a good chunk of it. It seems to be, in essence, the idea that the state should put the individual rights as a concept, as its fundamental principle, and always side with individualist rights over the state's interest or over group interests, except in situations where Carl determines it's sensible for the state to override people's interests, like in times of war. Although there's not like a philosophical principle, it just seems to be ad hoc. No, in these cases it's okay, but in those cases it's not okay. An example of how ad hoc it is: if you think about the principle that the individual has natural rights, and the state's job is to protect those natural rights, and you can't really reconcile then their position, which is what they say at some point. V and Sargon are talking, that in their ideal liberalist state, non-citizens in the state would have rights, as V says, but citizens would have more rights. Then Carl kind of butts in and clarifies, all right, but the state has no obligation to honor or observe, the rights for non-citizens. Because first principles isn't the point of the state to protect individual rights. They didn't say citizens' rights. They talked about individual rights, and the idea that people have natural rights inherent to them. Therefore, this idea that if you move to a state and the state's job is to preserve individual rights, but you're a non-citizen, what the state should do is ignore your rights in favor of the larger group. That's collectivism. Right? Saying that we should favor the group over this one individual, despite the fact that you're saying that your state honors individual rights as its core principle, it makes no sense. It's because they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to use words like individualist and collectivist, which don't operate within a state system, they operate within a sort of a principle system, and then mix that up with actual policies, like who gets to be a citizen, who doesn't get to be a citizen, what obligations does the state have to the people, what obligations do the people have to the state, and then say, oh, right, so all individuals have rights. The role of the state is to protect those rights, unless you're a non-citizen, in which case we're collectivist, and we'll kick you out and we won't honor your rights because you're not a member of our group. Your rights don't matter. This is the sort of deep thoughts that are going on. It was entertaining, I have to say. I had a lot of giggling. I did a little thread on Twitter where I just sort of gave some reactions. I have to take, when I listen to these though, like when I listen to Richard Spencer debate Sargon, the SS debate, or I listen to Sargon and V pretend or try to be political theorists, and their friends try so hard to engage with political theory, I have to take little stupidity breaks, because otherwise my brain can't process like all the ways that they're wrong at one time. Well, to be honest, guys, I've been going for at least a half an hour now. I have 2 other topics on here, which I don't know that I'm going to get into. I didn't know how long this was going to take, and I'm worried about running too long. 35 minutes, we're already 5 minutes over time. I will say that the 2 other topics I wanted to bring up, which are essentially related, talking with Richard Spencer and people like him, yes or no, and also the rise of alt-right resistance and attacks on the shitlord community. I think I'm actually going to defer those to our discussion on that's happening on Tim's Demotivator Opinions channel. Well, my time, I can't tell you what day or time it is because it depends on what time zone you're in. So go to Tim's channel, check it out, see what you think, or find out what time the show will be happening. We're going to do a group hangout discussing, well, the original intention of it was to discuss the Spencer Sargon hangout. But because since then there's been this liberalist movement, and there's been Tim and Bronx Blogger and Kevin briefly talking to Mike Enoch on the Worski show, and all the other things that have been happening around this, I feel like that show might not be as focused. But we will be discussing the Richard Spencer Sargon things, and maybe round 2 as well if that happens, and also this idea of the alt-right taking on the shitlord community on YouTube, and whether or not engaging with the alt-right is good to do. Does it help anything? And there is an interesting discussion to be had on that topic, but I will say that given the fact that I only want these shows to go 30 minutes in the first instance, I will delay. I will put that off to another time, and maybe we can discuss it as a group. Very briefly, just in case you're curious, my position is not a black, we should talk to black and white. Sorry, it's not black and white. Like sometimes when I'm talking, I'm thinking too fast, and the words, like I don't finish the words for the thought that I'm in because I'm already into the next one. My view on this isn't black and white. I don't hold an easy yes, no, yes, we should always talk to these people when we have a chance, or yes, we should as a general principle, or yes in the affirmative in some sort of conditional way. Nor do I have a firm position, no, we shouldn't ever talk to these people. No, we should always turn it down. I don't hold that position. I think I see the points on both sides. I understand and empathize with people who don't want to engage with assholes. It's draining. It doesn't often, for the people who take on Richard Spencer like this, it's not like they get praise. If anything, they get hassle. So there's a lot of cost to doing it. And the benefits from it aren't always obvious. I think my position on this is I'm not interested in doing it. I have no interest in spending time with idiots like Spencer or Enoch or anything else. Not because I don't think I could make good arguments, it's just because they're massively skeezy. And the formats that they're in don't lend themselves to actual productive conversations. I mean, just listen to the way that Sargon and Spencer just sniped back and forth like, little trolls on the internet. I mean, it was so bottom feeder kind of content, Jerry Springer kind of content. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But the thing that happened with Tim was a bit more interactive, like fair and balanced in terms of, one person would say something, another person would respond. It goes in that way. I'm not going to condemn someone for going on a show and having a debate. I understand the arguments against it, and that person is probably paying some costs for doing it. I also see that there is some merit to exposing these idiots for who they are, exposing their poor thought process, exposing the way that they misrepresent American history. And so, yeah, I'm kind of squidgying in the middle on that. No, I'm not. I just honestly can see both sides, and I don't feel like it's my place to tell people to talk to people or not to talk to people. I tend to be more, I can see your point, whatever somebody says, which makes me, I guess, seem kind of mushy. But that's honestly, I think it's just a complicated issue. But I'm sure we will talk about it on Tim's channel. That's happening, at least for me, tomorrow evening quite late. So, like, I don't know. Well, yeah. So Sunday sometime in my time zone, maybe it'll be a different day or time in your time zone. But that is going to wrap it up for my talk. I'm hoping to have a chance to see Kevin this week. He's been super busy and super popular, but I think we'd have a wonderful time having a happy hour in engaging with each other in terms of the liberalists' position of Sargon. I think that's going to be a great show. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this show, for this week at least. All that's left to be said is that I have been Kristi. You have been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Hope to see you on Tim's Hangout, and hope to see you back here for more content coming from me very soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.